let it shine, let it shine. Wow, thank you. Thank you, Yair, for being a pillar of our community and the movement and a champion of social justice. And to Sonia and Andrew for the invitation. Danny, it's great seeing you again. Thank you for your leadership of this organization, your friendship. I've been a fan since Lo Alecha with Jeff Klepper. Through the webcast, we all send our blessings to our dear friends Dick and Bella Hirsch, for whom this auditorium is named. So they're in Boca looking in right now, who've mentored and inspired so many of us. And brachot to my rabbi, the legendary Levi Wyman-Kelman, for Kol Neshama and for his return to civilian life that is impending. And a really warm welcome to Rabbi Yael Kerry, who takes the helm and the bima shortly at Kol Neshama. We hope that all of you will continue to see our shul, Kol Neshama, as your spiritual home here in Israel. And we look forward to celebrating Kabbalat Shabbat tomorrow at 5:15 at the first station. A big shout out, I owe a big thanks to Rabbi Eric Yaffe, and he knows why, and we'll leave it at that. And really just loving brachot, and I didn't know he was going to be here, but World Union leader Steve Breslauer, you and your late wife Sandy have been just an inspiration in so many ways to Susan and to myself. It has meant the world to us, and David's here, which is amazing. Thank you so much. And congratulations on your award, Houston. So speaking of Susan, being married to Rabbi Susan Silverman is probably my most authentic credential to be with you today. Through her, I have served as a rebitz in some of your communities. I have served, I have taught in your Hebrew schools. I have led Israeli dance in your temples. I produced Baba Ganou's magazine and interfaithfamily.com. I have hung out in the back of the shuls, mostly with young mothers and children. And I appear now as a supporting cast member in her new best-selling memoir, Casting Lots, Creating a Family in a Beautiful, Broken World. And if any of you are interested in bringing adoption, her second nurture program, into your congregation, she's right over here. Now, 4 years ago, Rosh Chodesh Adar, our family's values and our vision for the state of Israel were severely tested at the Kotel, as Susan and our daughter Hallel, along with others, were arrested for the crime of wearing a talit. Our goal was that we had wanted to set into motion the forces that Ashira, who's our youngest, she was then 9, when she became bat mitzvah, that she'd be able to wear a talit at the Kotel without fear and have an aliyah without fear. So Susan's arrest famously triggered a world Jewish outcry, a delicious government crisis, which we took great pleasure in collectively, and some really memorable tweets, which you can look up. Ashira, by the way, at her bat mitzvah was able to wear a talit and not worry because we won, and the law actually changed. So kol hakavod. And she was able to have an aliyah from the Torah because Natan Sharansky, who was great to see him last night, promised our family no new arrests. But unlike that, like the Soviet Jewry movement, we still had to smuggle in a Torah, which is deplorable. A fair enough compromise was reached involving the southern end of the wall. It has not been implemented. I am going to make a prediction, folks. Read my lips, right? I am predicting that on the day before the 50th anniversary of the Six-Day War, and thank you, Paul, what a great scene, huh? On the day before, on June 4th, the High Court will begin to dismantle the ultra-Orthodox monopoly at the Kotel. You heard it here first. So why is Captain Sunshine, right, speaking about religious pluralism? What's that about? Okay, this is where it gets serious. Because disruptive theologies and disruptive technologies have a lot in common and are necessary for an inspired Judaism and an enlightened Israel. I'm going to say it again. Okay, ready? Because disruptive theologies, what we believe, and disruptive technologies, how we live our lives, have a lot in common and are necessary for an inspired Judaism and enlightened Israel. Disruptive theologies and disruptive technologies are both idol smashers. Isn't that the role of our movement? And they're both monopoly busters. And when they're combined, they are powerful, world-changing forces. Monopolies, religious or otherwise, are bad for Jews, like Chief Rabbinate, right? And when it comes to climate change, it's bad for every living thing on the planet. Now, I know a little bit about that because with my teams and my staff and my partners, we broke the monopoly of the Israel Electric Company, our little solar company in the Arava, to receive the first generation license and the first power purchase agreement for a solar field in Israel's history. And it was for a modest yet very revolutionary 5-megawatt solar field at Kibbutz Keturah. Now, Keturah, for those that you know, it's across the street from Latan, down the street from Yahal, so it's part of I would say, the most idealistic, pioneering, last remaining corner of Israel that really shines in so many ways. But I don't think it's a coincidence that the solar revolution in Israel sprang from a community that is empowered to embrace theological as well as technological vision and innovation. It's all related, folks. Now, before I was a solar guy, I was a Jewish educator married to a rabbi. I understand there's a bunch of people like that here. So the roots of my innovation are not startup nations, science and technology, but enlightened Judaism, which we strive to live every day as a family. And interwoven with our vision of enlightened Judaism is God, with whom, like many of you, I continue to wrestle. I don't have any answers, but continue to wrestle, and whose presence I am often blessed to feel in my life. With teams, I brought solar power to Israel, to Africa, and elsewhere, because I feel commanded to do so in a liberal Jewish sense, as I learned from my teacher, Dr. Eugene Borowitz from HUC, in the Covenant Theology class I was privileged to take in New York. My partners and impact investors have figured out how to deploy a scalable business model for this Tikkun Olam in Israel and around the world. And I'm really proud that our investors span the entire Jewish religious and political spectrum. This is, in a sense, a miracle. It's like what we heard last night about you guys sitting with Shas in the education committee of a Jewish agency. It was like, okay, this is amazing. These people wouldn't have normally a place to interact, but our vision is shared by, I would say, the entire spectrum of Jewish life. And this is really where Kimi Tzion, Tetzeh Ora, we say, right? From Jerusalem shines forth a new light. I do want to say I'm speaking for myself and not for my company, investors, or staff. Now, as you heard, I was at the Paris Climate Conference, and I think I was the only kippah amid 40,000 people, and it's bright in orange. I was always confident. I may have been the only person on the planet that was confident that we were going to have this historic deal. Copenhagen beforehand failed. But I knew that deal was going to get signed, and that's why I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be there. I wanted to help do my little piece to push it forward. And the way that I knew is that it was scheduled to be signed, based on the 2-week program, smack in the middle of Hanukkah, our festival of lights and miracles. It's clear as day that this historic agreement was going to happen. It didn't hurt that I also had tickets to the Madonna concert that Thursday night, which was the signing date, and to me that was an omen, sort of like a prayer, like all the good forces in the universe were coming together. Now, it was a deeply spiritual experience for me because I ended up spending most of that conference accepting hugs from African energy officials. It was really amazing. It was also 2 weeks after the Paris bombing. And Susan and I were debating, should I wear the kippah or not? But without the kippah, I'd just be like one of 40,000 people. With the kippah, I'm one of 40,000 people and stood out. And the reason is because from Jerusalem, and based on our experience here in Israel, Chaim Motzen and I developed and financed the first commercial-scale solar field in sub-Sahara Africa. It's at the Agahos Shalom Youth Village and supplies today 6% of the entire country's power, which is like a miracle. And it was the first example, and this was important for Paris, where in Africa we're able to decouple GDP growth from emissions growth, which is just another way of saying they were able to continue the 8% growth of their economy without adding any greenhouse gas emissions to fuel that growth. And now we're working closely with Israel's prime minister to advance solar as an expression of Israeli humanitarian, economic, and diplomatic interests in a dozen African countries. I'm just going to say the date, June 4th, which is the same day as the High Court. There's something going on in Africa, and that's all I can say. So I'll probably be with the Prime Minister when the High Court makes the decision on the Kotel and the dismantling of the ultra-Orthodox monopoly. It'll be very interesting. Our business goal is also our Jewish mission, and I think that's why Yair reached out to me. It's to bring affordable green energy to 50 million people by 2025. Now, when Susan, the kids, and I made Aliyah to Kibbutz Keturah from Boston, my partners and I set out on really with a ludicrous goal, like an audacious, ludicrous, big, hairy goal. And that was, we wanted by 2020 that from the historic Red Sea all the way up to the Dead Sea, including Eilat, we wanted that 100% of that region was going to be powered by the sun during the day. All the consultants said it was impossible. The state of Israel was against it. The electric company, poo-pooed it, because no one had ever achieved anything like that before on planet Earth. Today, the Arava is 70% powered by the sun during the day, and by 2020, we're going to exceed 100%. Thank you. Im tirtzu ein zo agada. It's one of those great Zionist lessons. And this is the model for Israel. This is the model for Africa. This is the model for your home communities. This is the model for the world. And this is also what I've started writing a book about. So coming in a year. Now, there's still much work to be done by all of us, right? Because Danny, and we're not free to desist from that, as the song goes. In Israel today, outside of the Arava, this is bad news part, fossil fuels have a choking 97% hold on the energy economy. That 97% of Israel is the bad stuff. It's a relic of the past that must be smashed like the golden calf. And in Africa, there are 600 million people without access to any power whatsoever, and 200 million that are burning expensive and dirty diesel. My covenant theology says, Dr. Abramowitz, that access to green, affordable power for needy people should be elevated to be a fundamental human right, according to the International Declaration of Human Rights. For without power, how can people have the dignity that comes from a job? How can people really have health care or education? How can we really advance as a people in a civilization? So if we as enlightened Jews believe that everyone is created in God's image, therefore they are deserving of infinite dignity. So then this work from Jerusalem, which is your theme, of bringing power to the people of Africa is a Jewish obligation and not just a business. Now, our Torah, I think, is really clear. As we stood at Sinai, or as we stand at Sinai, Susan wanted me to edit that, sorry I missed that. As we stood and stand at Sinai and received the law, the clear black and white law, the commandments from God, God sets out a paradigm, a struggle and a blessing for us as enlightened Jews. God says, if you hear my voice, what does that mean, right? If you hear my voice and you keep my covenant, then and only then will you be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, Mamlechet Kohanim and Goy Kadosh. Now, coming from the oppression of Egypt, where Pharaoh ruled with a deadly iron fist, where there was a hierarchy, a religious and spiritual hierarchy of Pharaoh and the priests above all, we learn that command control of religion in society leads to cults of death. God wants us to be the opposite of the cult of death of ancient Egypt. The Jewish people must always represent a positive celebration of life. And the way to do that is to do away with religious coercion and hierarchy. This is progressive Judaism. This is enlightened Judaism. For no one, and I mean no one, can dictate spirituality. To be a kingdom of priests is the ultimate democratization of access to the ultimate power. And I'll leave it to you to decide if I'm only speaking about spiritual power or other forms of God's pure energy. Now, my role is to help Israel transform into a superpower of goodness by bringing Israeli green energy. But I want to talk about your role, Madam Chair, esteemed members of the board. And here's the link between your work and my mission. While I'm obviously a proponent of the Paris Climate Agreement, the best way to beat climate change, not to mitigate, not to live with it, but the best way to beat climate change is hidden in our heritage. The best way to beat climate change is actually in this room. The best way, Mr. President, to beat climate change is in the communities of the World Union. And this is the secret, ready? Decarbonize Shabbat. Transform it, folks, into a real day of rest. A non-consumeristic, real day of rest. Decarbonize carbon. Now, on Yom Kippur in Israel, for those of you who have been, there's almost no greenhouse gas emissions. It's a happy day. The children are out on the streets playing, breathing the cleanest air that we have during the year. On Shabbat in Israel, mostly due to our Orthodox brothers and sisters, the amount of greenhouse gas emissions goes down every week on Shabbat at sunset by 30%. There's a lesson there. If the entirety of the Jewish people worldwide, and that means the majority, meaning you, meaning us, if the entirety of the Jewish people worldwide, from the entire religious spectrum, would truly observe Shabbat every week, and if we could model a low-carbon day of rest for all the other faiths, whatever day they want to pick, there'd be a 1/7 reduction in greenhouse gas emissions worldwide, and then the majesty of God's earth will be back in balance. Now that's power. And with power, we learn from the sage Spider-Man, with power comes responsibility. Okay, so here's your responsibility, and I'll close. Next time you come back and we see each other, I have 3 challenges for you. 1, we should all be switching to electric cars now, not in the future, now. Make that switch before your next connections. In 4 years' time, there should be a rabbinic decree from high up. I know we talked about there's no hierarchy, but let there be a decision of the movement that driving a combustion engine in 4 years from on will be considered a Chilul Hashem. Truly, I am not kidding. I am not kidding. If you saw the devastation worldwide of climate change, where I go, and Africa, you would understand how morally culpable we are. It should be a Chilul Hashem, and we need to talk that way. Number 2, power your holy places of worship with holy, clean energy, folks. Come on, we can do that. And number 3, it is time for our movements to divest from fossil fuels. That means the rabbinic pension funds. That means our endowments. Now, we can't do it all in our lifetimes, right, Rabbi Friedlander? We're not free to desist from it, from saving the world. But boy, are we on the hook now, folks, to do everything in our power, to empower all Jews spiritually, and to materially raise the dignity of all who are downtrodden, especially before the effects of climate change devastates. My vision for Israel, and perhaps for its presidency, is for Israeli technological innovation to represent Tikkun Olam to the world, and for theological innovation to empower all Jews to truly feel spiritually at home here in Israel. I really want to thank you for inviting this Rebbe to be part of your world gathering and Jerusalem's Jubilee. Toda rabah. I think that was the idea behind kashrut in a certain sense, right? So we need to bring that into the modern age also, particularly when it comes to energy, because of its devastating effects. We need to change all our mentalities about ethical living, ethical consumerism. Absolutely.
We have a question in the back.
Yeah. So why advocate for electric cars instead of electric public transportation?
Oh, thank you. It's not instead of. Go for it.
Because that would imply a real sacrifice.
Well, yeah. No. So look, the public transportation needs to be increased, particularly in this country. I don't know if you've noticed getting around. It's harder getting around this time than last time, and this population is going to double in the next whatever period of time. It's really a disaster, and unfortunately, the power of the car importers, the political power, is very, very strong. And where are the citizens and where's world jury demanding greater public transportation and greener public transportation? It's not either or, but this is the role of really our values to put them into action, and it'd be great to see the movement take that on in Israel, because it's part of our public face, right, and our responsibility, but also in our communities back home.
Thank you, Yossi.